Welcome back to part 4, building the Prometheus. As discussed in part 3, we are going to be tackling the engines. This is actually my third attempt at matching up all these parts. I think being dyslexic, it's had its effects in terms of trying to match things together. My philosophy is, therefore, try things 3 times, and that will negate any issues in terms of having to pull things apart. I think it's the same methodology they apply to carpentry or any sort of construction, where you should test fit 3 times and then you're okay, because you just don't want to be pulling things apart, especially with epoxy resin glue, which will basically make a hell of a mess. With the fuselage we've made great progress, but this is where we're going to have the proverbial bump in the road, because the engines have fit issues. This covering secures this ball joint. There we go. Which in turn connects to the pylon on the main fuselage. But this just does not fit, and no matter how much I try and push it and wedge it and twist it, it's not going to go. Now, reading the manual, it suggests that you machine this channel, you make it wider so that we'll have a fit, but I don't think that's a good idea. No disrespect, Fantastic Plastic. I don't think it's a good idea, because if you start machining this channel, you're going to lose all the detail, or you're going to encroach on the detail of the conduit, and you do not want to do that. You do not want to lose that detail, because I strongly feel that it's essential to the overall aesthetic of the engines in themselves. So what I propose is that we take some of the area of this piece. As we look in here, the walls are quite substantial and will withstand some sanding. I mean, obviously you just don't want to go at it so it's actually loose in place, which you do not want. So my suggestion, and what I'm going to do, is take this back in increments and test fit it and test fit it and test fit it. That is the way to proceed. Otherwise we're just going to, as our cousins like to say, we're going to be in a world that hurts, and we don't want to be hurting. Not this far into the project, and not especially so as we've made good progress. So we just want to continue that good progress and basically just keep our wits about us. I think this kit is definitely a thinking man's model. Definitely. And I've said previously, it stretches you in every which way. You have to think about it. You really have to think about it. You can't just go at it and hope for the best. It's just not going to work. So, as I've said, what I'm going to do is work on these sections, and hopefully we'll install them successfully. So we'll be back in a wee while, and I think it will be a wee while, but you won't know that, the viewer. So we'll see you in a bit. Right then, we are back. This is 4 hours later, believe it or not. So it has taken 4 hours on each of the engines to, how can I say, trim these coverings for the ball and socket joint. I've also widened the channels in each of the engine cowlings to insert this section here, which is the upper part of the landing gear. So this is not a complete engine, but work in progress with regards to the ball and joint assembly, which will then eventually be attached to the pylon and boom. This is one of the engines deconstructed. Now, I said it wouldn't be a good idea to widen these channels. So what we have done is essentially widen the interior of the ball and socket covering. I've taken roughly 1 millimeter off each of the interior surface, so that now snugly fits into place like so. I make one concession, however. Not one of these pieces are exactly standard. That's the covering, that's the engine itself. So each part has to be modified according to each engine, if that makes sense. So we have 4 engines, 4 slightly different fittings. I make one concession. As well as substantially trimming the interior of this cover, I've made tiny inroads into the engine channels in which this is inserted. Not much, just tiny amounts, and that's what I would suggest to any modeler who's going to build this kit. So you take away the interior surface of this cover, and you basically have a little nibble at the channel that you're going to insert this into. If you massively go into the channels, you're just going to ruin the kit, and you'll have to, well, not ruin the kit, you'll have to put some putty in there, which you really don't want, because you want this to be self-supporting. You don't want to be test fitting it and the putty is going to come away, because this is quite difficult to get in, and then you have to gently lever it out to remove it to test fit the ball socket, or the ball joint rather. Now, if I hadn't inlaid this with perspex or plexiglass, due to the excessive handling or the rough handling, because it's like bone surgery, you have to really wrench at a patient to get a pin in, or to, how can I say, pin a joint or bone together. It's similar. It's like that. So basically, if I hadn't have inlaid this whole thin section that's underneath it would have just come away. Literally just come away. So when tackling these iron engines, it is prerequisite that you lay down this perspex or this plexiglass. Otherwise you're going to be in a lot of trouble. But I've anticipated that, so that's not happened to me, thank goodness. So that's that. And as I said, you know, this is a whole one. But these engines are nowhere near finished because you've got all the piping, all the conduits. But the next job is actually to drill a hole through this section. That's where I'm going to be threading the wiring for the lighting. And also we'll be drilling a hole through this section because the wiring has to go through here to connect to the other engines, to connect to the main lighting system, you know, the circuitry, etc. So yeah, just let me see if I can lever this off on camera and just demonstrate this. Just hope I don't mess this up. See if we can get the appropriate tool. Right, so where are we? Here we go. So if you're test fitting, you just leave it up because there's a slight gap here, so you can just about fit that in there, and then you gently, very gently, pop, not quite there, not quite there. It's quite a substantially tight fit. That's even with the work done to remove. There we are. There she is. So yeah. So test fitting that, you just lever it in the corner and then gently ease the covering out of the socket, and then this goes in, that goes over, so a hole's going to be drilled through that, this plate is in place so the wall's not going to give away, and well, basically all these engines are going to be pre-wired and will have to be substantially tested in terms of the lighting, because once these units are closed, they are closed. They are never, and I mean they are never coming apart again. I mean seriously. So the lighting will have to be spot on. The wiring will have to be second to none in terms of it being a proper job, basically. So that's where we're at. So this is the first stage in the preparation for wiring. I mean, it's been just over a week and we're laying the grounds for the wiring already. So I'm pleased, I'm surprised, but there we go. We are making very, very steady and swift progress. So once I've done that, I will be back and show you what we have done. See you in a bit. Okay, we're back. In the interest of political correctness, what I meant to say is that this kit is a thinking person's kit as opposed to a thinking man's kit. You have to forgive my gender because I'm speaking from a subjective point of view. And secondly, to make a correction, it's a world of hurt. If we make any mistakes, we'll be in a world of hurt, not a world that hurts, although equally that might apply. But getting back to the kit, I've been a bit of a busy bee off camera. I thought, oops, let's get this straight. I thought I would just crack on with these pylons or engine mounts. I've also worked on these ball sockets, which were a bit of a pain actually, because they are not moulded symmetrically. I've had to do some sanding so that they would fit. This is not focusing for some reason. So that they would fit in the socket. So I've sanded around here, tried to make it as round as possible. But even so, you drill a hole through here and it doesn't, it's not centered. So none of them are perfectly centered, unfortunately. Also, I've had a bit of a to-do on one of these. As I was drilling, the end piece here started to warp and melt, but I've managed to correct that. It's still a functional piece. So let's see if I can find the one to which I'm referring. Not that one. Right, let's turn you around. Is it this one? Ah, yeah, there we go, it's that one. As you can see, not a complete disaster, because this piece is still essentially intact, but a near disaster. The fact that this piece is warped is not really going to affect how the engines are mounted, as this is going to be glued into the socket here. So let's see if we can get that into focus. So all this is going to be glued. The only part that's going to be posable will be the engine itself, apart from the pylons. I don't know why, I seem to be having trouble focusing today. Maybe I'm half asleep. Right, also, let me show you this. Take that off. Here we go. Oh, it's a tight fit. This is the metal tube which I scavenged from a garden light. The cheap LED garden lights that you buy at the garden centre. I bought one of those. Well, I bought the tube actually. I discarded the light. But I was having difficulty finding something of the right circumference to actually fit in here. So I had real difficulty. I did consider buying a very expensive bathroom towel rail to cut up, but I thought, well, I'm not really going to spend a whole load of money on that. That would just be a little bit silly. So what I've done, I've cut it down the middle, as you can see here, and rolled it. So by rolling it, I've actually strengthened this piece of tubing. So my next job in terms of making this totally secure will either be to solder it or glue it. I'll most likely glue it. I might even be able to use a couple of screws to hold it in situ while it's setting. We'll see how that turns out. But the wiring is going to lead from each pylon into this mount, and the wiring will then come out of the tubing connecting to the rest of the ship. So somehow there's got to be enough, I don't know, I don't want things to be mounted too tightly in terms of the internal structure, otherwise we'll have snap wires and disconnected LEDs, which we don't want. So it'll be a matter of just figuring out how far this is actually going to turn within the kit. I might actually make a mechanism inside where I've got like a locking mechanism is what I'm trying to say. So if I create like a locking mechanism whereby this turns but locks at a certain position so it can't turn any further, otherwise we are going to end up with snap wires everywhere, which we do not want. So that's what we're going to do on that. So it has to be glued together. Then I'll have to drill some holes through which I'm going to trail the wires, and I'll have to mount some sort of locking mechanism and one inside the vessel itself. In terms of these engines, well, they need a tidying up because there's an awful lot of excess resin in critical areas of detail, so we want to clean all that resin out so we've got nice crisp detail for when we glue the kit together, and we can just, you know, work away on that. So it's not being too much of an ordeal actually, the engines. It's, as I said, it took me a wee while to get my head around it, but we got there. In terms of doing the sockets and the mounts, etc., it's, as I said, it's taken about 4 hours, so roughly an hour on each engine. I mean, I don't work at warp speed, unfortunately. I mean, these things have to be done at an even pace, but at a realistic pace, so that we're not running into massive errors. Especially, this is my first time out on this model kit. You know, it isn't something that I've done dozens of times. So yeah, who knows, I might buy another kit and call it the Magellan, because the Prometheus was originally called the Magellan, and it's a different paint scheme. Actually, there are 3, 4, maybe 5 different renderings of Prometheus under the name Magellan, and they all equally look stunning in terms of their colour, their design, the detail. It all looks lovely. It's all fantastic stuff. But yeah, fantastically detailed model, fantastically beautiful model, fantastically designed and realised by Ben Proctor. I think what's really going to take a fantastic amount of time is scribing all the panel lines and tidying up all the landing and in flight gear. So I think that's really, really going to take a very, very, very long time. Goodness knows how long that's going to take. So yeah. So, as I've said what I was going to do, I've done these parts. I've drilled the holes. So what I'm going to do next is drill the hole through these tidy these engines up, drill the holes, get these mounted into position, glue that into place, and then I think we might do another test fit. So that should be interesting. Also, lovely brass. Brass. So the command deck is going to be made out of this. The bridge area, the section under here, because the fantastic plastic part is just a solid piece of resin. I mean, I could always try hollowing it out and putting the windows in, etc., etc., but I just don't think it's going to be as nice as brass. And also, I originally thought of laying down some polystyrene detailing, because this isn't flush, it isn't accurately detailed. Oh, it's out of focus actually. So where are we? Yes, so I was talking about adding some polystyrene detail as a plate over this, which would more accurately reflect the illustrations of Ben Proctor. But I've decided that I'm actually going to do it in brass. So that's going to be really nice if I can pull it off. So it'll all be nicely scribed. I'm not going to do any acid etching or laser etching. I don't have the capacity to laser etch anyway. So it's all going to be done by hand. But yes, a nice brass plate. So that'll be screwed and glued into place. So that'll be really, really good, I think. I'm looking forward to that challenge. I think I can get an awful lot of detail in the brass. And I'm particularly looking forward to constructing the command or the command deck, the bridge of the Prometheus out of brass. I think that's going to look really, really, really good. So challenging, but I'm looking forward to it. So I'm going to tidy up these engines, see where we are, and we'll do a test fit. We'll do a test fit on the engines. So we will see you. Okay, we are back. What we have here is the engine with the covering, with the ball socket and mount in place. Everything is functional. So when this is actually in situ on the Prometheus, you have the multi-vector attitude of the vessel. I've had real sore thumbs and fingers manipulating this. It took an awful lot of work to get this part to actually move. One trick is to actually put some engine oil or bike oil into the socket prior to mounting, or just after, you can just spray some oil in between. The only problem with this is that the oil will spread onto the resin, which might repel any primer or paint that you would want to apply. So just be wary of that. What I have done on this particular example is get some shampoo, good quality shampoo, soft painting watercolour brush, and giving it a good old scrub under some warm water. That's remove some of the excess oil around this area, but I do not doubt for a minute that it will need another wash. The only problem with that, motorbikes excluded, is that you may wash away some of the oil in the joint. So it's just a case of balancing things properly. But that's it really. So walls of the covering, as previously demonstrated, have been trimmed back. The channels just nibbled at, nothing really taken away. Also, I forgot to mention, the flat surface of those channels have to be heavily scored and cross-hatched. The same with the covering, so that you have a keyed surface so that the glue will seep into, and that will enhance your joint, because this is never ever going to be removed. Not ever. So basically, if you mess this up, you're going to have to go begging Fantastic Plastic for a spare part. So whatever you do, just don't mess this up. But you can see, look, if you see there, you can see right through to the cutting mat. That's the hole where, or the channel where the wires are going to go through. Do I have a spare piece of wire? I have a spare piece of black wire. So you get the idea. You get the idea. The red and black wire, and this being the black wire, will fit in there quite nicely. And there we go. Although you have maneuverability on the engines, once attached to the pylons, that becomes a little bit limited because of the pylon structure. So you'll have this motion, you'll have this, and you'll have a bit of that. But you know, it's not something that's going to be played with, because you'll loosen the joint, which is something you have to avoid. Looking at how I'm going to attach this, glue alone is not going to hold this in position. So what I'll have to do is pin this through the actual mount so that we can rotate and we can position without, how can I say, applying too much stress to the glue, to the joint, to the whole structure. So we don't want to do that. And besides which, it's a model, it's not a toy. So yeah, So that's all I really have to say on that. I've done some principal cleanup work on all 4 engines. I've cleaned away, let's see if we get that in focus, all the imperfections, all the areas where there have been air pockets. These intakes here had to be taken back because some of them were infilled with an awful lot of excess resin, so that's being taken back. As previously shown, these channels have been widened, so this can be easily inserted, he says. There we go. And then, like so. So that's pretty much it. But I've had a bit of a wee surprise today. Wasn't really expecting this. Now, you know, I was talking about decals for the Prometheus. Well, look what's arrived today from Canada, courtesy of Jim of JBot Decals. Look at this. This is the Prometheus's decal sheet, which Jim kindly made for me. So we have the candy bar stripes for the landing gear, we have various warning decals, we have the Wayland logo, Wayland core logo I should say rather, and we have the Prometheus. We also have the, what do we have down here? We have the call sign, or should I say the call number, which identifies the Prometheus, so that's like a, you know, the Enterprise's NCC 1701, etc, etc. So yeah, he's done a real sterling job, and to be perfectly honest, I cannot be grateful enough. So Prometheus is going to look absolutely fabulous with these decals he's provided for us. So yeah, so those who are building this kit, just call on Jim, call on JBot decals. Yeah, he's also done some decals for my USS Sulaco that I'm building, which is a mammoth project, but that I will not be videoing, but it will be posted and you'll see it in due time. You have to forgive me, I am so shattered. Tiredness has crept up on me like a wolf and I am beat. But yeah, happy but tired. So I'm a happy tired. So if you just bear with us a moment, we'll be right back, and we might have something interesting to show you. And here she is. Almost a full mock-up. Absolute joy. We have Jim's decals there as well in shot. Another big thanks to Jim J-Bot decals. Big thumbs up. Looking forward to applying those. There we go. I think that's going to be it for tonight. And I should know my radius, circumferences, etc., etc. Basic Geometry 101. It all goes out the window when you're sharp. But anyway, I hope you're enjoying the journey, and that, if anything, this experience is informative. I'm not the greatest orator or performer. It doesn't come to me naturally, but I hope this is an aid to those who have this model kit or those who will buy it. So, and that's the cat in the background. Anyway, this is Prometheus signing off. Yeah. Okay. I think that's the cat saying good night. Anyway, no night. This is Prometheus signing off. See you in part 5.